of sports flowing in their veins. Mackie and Judd on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
When you have that many penalties, you're concerned that your team's undisciplined and doing the wrong things, but we don't think we were. Do we have to not take penalties? 100%. And I'm not blaming the referees. It's just we've got to find a way, and it's happened to us a few times over the course where we have to find a way just to stay the hell out of the box.
Dean Evison talking about his team last night. Welcome in. Mackie and Judd. Phil out today, at least for this portion of the show. He will be back in for Write That Down. So it is Judd. It is Declan. It is the day after a very disappointing 6-2 loss for the Wild at Nashville. And so we'll basically turn Mackie and Judd into a Judd's hockey show. We won't even talk about the Wolves, who just put together a stinker at Target Center last night. Got booed off the court. Good for the fans. Against Washington. All right. So, first of all, I want to make it very clear I'm not panicking, okay? Because, people are going to expect me to panic. They're going to expect Judd Zolgad to panic.
I'm a little shocked. Okay.
10 consecutive games with points, which will now be bookended with back-to-back 6-2 regulation losses to the Nashville Predators, which is almost certainly one of two teams, the Blues being the other, that the Wild's going to play in the first round of the playoffs. So this is an important conversation here. I feel like the kid did something wrong. And I don't want to scream and yell, but it's a learning lesson, right? Because, what's going on here, back-to-back defeats to the Predators, 6-2, is not exactly a positive.
No.
So here's where I'm going to start with you on this, because there's a lot of takeaways. The true Wild fans, the stands will say, they had 49 shots. They played fine. I mean, I'm going to start here. The Wild was a very different team construction-wise, in many ways, playing last night's game than they were the last time that they lost at home 6-2 to the Predators. So here's what I think was the problem just from a starting point last night, Declan. The Wild went into that game basically trying to prove we're a different team. We're tougher. Like those fights, I believe that in the end there were 4, including 3 in the first period. Those fights were not accidental, and they certainly weren't all spontaneous. Those fights were sort of, we're going to show you that we're tougher now, because the Predators lead the league in majors. They are a tough team. They are a bigger team, or certainly have size. And so I think the Wild went in very much with a game plan of saying, let's show them that we're tough too. I think we've seen something from this team, and this is true about the Wild before the deadline when the trades were made and now. When they get away from who they are, who they truly are, that doesn't mean that they're not tough, but when they try and make a statement that sort of flies in the face of just their natural organic game, they're not as good. They're not as good. And I think that there was such a focus last night on trying to make a statement instead of, and this is not an anti-fighting rant. This is they were trying to make a statement instead of just allowing the game to come to them and playing the game that they played so well against Carolina and Washington over the weekend, that I think we've seen when this team does that, it's a bad starting point. They need to be, their identity is to allow themselves to be themselves, not to get out of body and try and show the Nashville Predators we're tough too. If they have to, that's fine. But when they're going in with that plan, I think we saw the result, which is they get away from an identity of who they want to be.
Well, it's cliched, but anytime you get a team out of its rhythm and you take their game away, it makes it hard to win, right? Look how the Wild were able to suppress Colorado a few weeks ago, and I was like, oh, if they take Colorado away from their game and they get guys like McKinnon in the box and they frustrate the top line, I like the Wild's chances, right? Nashville said, well, we're going to get physical with you. We're going to force you to drop the gloves. We're going to force you to also take a lot of penalties. We have one of the best power plays in the league, and Nashville does, and we're going to beat you that way. And to be honest, that's how Nashville should win hockey games. They have a good power play. They're not afraid to be physical. They have a great goaltender in Sarles. So I'm not surprised that they were able to frustrate the Wild out of their game necessarily. And yeah, I mean, it's one game. And this season, and going back a little bit further, Nashville has kind of had the Wild's number. But if the Wild get out of their game, and again, cliche answer or not, if you take a team out of their game, you're probably going to beat them. So Nashville, I think, gave a little bit of a formula, right? Like that's the thing that I think Wild fans would have to be a little bit worried about, that they took away their game. And St. Louis is going to play a similar style. They don't have as good as a goaltender as Saros, but St. Louis also saw a recipe of, this is how we can beat the Wild of physicality.
Mm-hmm. Well, but the problem I thought was last night, especially, I don't think that Nashville, I don't think it's a credit to the Predators. I think the Wild went into that game because I think we had 2 fights within like the first 130 where the Wild where the Wild was purposely trying to initiate that stuff to show the Predators we're tough too. We can, and look, you're tougher. That's awesome. But I think the Wild basically played by thinking that they were making a statement. They played into the Predators' hands. Correct. By allowing themselves to be manipulated. And that's not them. Right. And look, I mean, the formula for what the Wild did at one time was flat out awesome. It was fun. But that's not the league now. That's not the game now. And the game, and the Wild's game ideally is to play a tough, rugged, but really pretty damn good skating game. And the Predators and Blues they love that. Okay, let's play tough. I think what you have to do, what the Wild didn't do from the face-off last night, was they didn't embrace what makes them good. They basically were trying to say, we're a tough guy. Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, you're tougher. There's no question you're tougher.
They're tougher. They're tougher.
Yeah, but that's still not your game. And what? Just the fights showed that, but the Predators, 3 for 3 on their first 3 power plays, 3 of 4 for the game. And the reality was, I think one of their goals came a split second after a penalty came to an end. So really it's 4 power play goals. And then the other problem too, the health of Dumba. Dumba got hurt. It sounds bad. I think they are describing it as upper body. My guess is what, a shoulder. Dean said
he was harnessed over. Yeah. Not ideal.
Yeah, Dean said not good. So if a coach says that, so again, a guy who is absolutely key, top 4 guy is out now. So yeah, there was not a lot of good, and I know that they got a ton of shots, but I just don't care about that. There was not a lot of good to take away from that game. I'm not panicked, but between the fact that is another loss to a divisional opponent who you very well could face in the first round of the playoffs, and Dumba now being lost for, late in the regular season, a significant amount of time, I'm also not going to say that this was a good loss in any way.
No, it wasn't. Before we get into the Dumba injury, because there's obviously a lot of takeaways we can get there if he is indeed out for a significant period of time, potentially the season. Nashville has played the Wild really well the last few years. And, I think there was now a fear of, oh my God, like if they play Nashville, this isn't just a walk in the park. They could get bounced in the first round. I tweeted this out last night because it reminded me of this, but in a different way. So remember last year when the pandemic shortened season was ending and, well, are we going to get Colorado or are we going to get Vegas? And who do we match up better? Well, we match up better with Vegas. We've beaten Vegas historically. We just match up better. That should be no problem. I want to play Vegas. And then it turned out that I know that game went to a 7-game series, but Vegas was up 3-1. The Wild stole 5 and 6. You end up losing a 7-game series to a superior team, and the regular season success that you've had against them, for the most part, was irrelevant. It was irrelevant, and all I care about is postseason success. So, if they get the Predators, and I'm scared because of what has happened in the regular season, that's not to say that I have trepidations, and there's formulas here that can be taken away that you can't use against them and against yourselves in a playoff series. But this is me also not panicking. I wouldn't look too much into how the Wild have played them in the regular season, because come playoff time, it's going to be a completely different beast, and the game is going to change. So if you're a Wild fan and you're worried about potentially playing the Preds because the fact of they've beaten you a lot in the regular season lately, I wouldn't look too far into that. That's all. That's kind of how my grand scheme after that loss. That's my biggest takeaway that I also had.
Well, and two, the takeaway is this: any team that you play can bounce you. Like there is no, and it will. And to be clear, it might be very disappointing, and I understand that completely. It's not an upset of any. There's no, if the Wild beats the Preds in the first round, or the Blues, or conversely, the Blues or Preds beat the Wild, there's no upset here. Like this is no longer. There was a time in this league where you got the first round opponent and tried to kick their ass. There is nobody who the Wild will potentially play first round who doesn't scare me. Like there's nobody who I'm going to say, oh yeah, you should beat that team. Anyone you might play now in the first round can beat you.
Sure. And you're not making this point, so I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but at the same time, if the Wild lose a first round series, it's going to be I would say a massive disappointment. I would say it's a massive disappointment.
It's a massive, but it's not surprising. There's no one that they will play in the first round that I will be surprised if they lose. It's a big disappointment.
Yeah.
But the fact is, you're not playing. You no longer get a team that snuck in and stinks.
Yeah.
And so yes, be disappointed. You should be. I'll tell you right now, Bill Guerin will be extremely. But if they play the Predators or Blues especially and lose in now it's a bust if they get swept, no question about that. But what happened last spring, unfortunately, is pretty normal. Like you play a team like the Golden Knights who are good, you lose in 7. I mean, it's still a good series. It's disappointing.
Yeah.
But the reality is there's nobody that you're going to match up against that can't bounce you and that you can honestly say, I'm shocked by that.
I get you. I get you there.
Like if the Predators beat you can't be shocked. I
think the biggest takeaway is I think the only thing that really scares me more too about Nashville over St. Louis is just I think Saros is a better goaltender. He's been dynamite.
Husso's played really well.
Husso's good. Husso's a good goalie. There's good. For sure, but Saros, in my opinion, is legitimately one of the top 3 goaltenders in the NHL, and he has the ability, as we saw last night. You fire 49 shots on him, and he stopped 47 of them, and because the Wild couldn't stay out of the box, and Predators also have a very good power play, you're going to lose. So yes, Husso's good. I'm not discrediting him there, but I think Saros is legitimately one of the best goaltenders in the league, and he has that capability that we always talk about of Nashville. All they have to do, like think about if you're a Preds fan here. All you have to do if to make a run in the playoffs, potentially, can we be good on special teams and can Saros carry us? And that's, their offense isn't great, right? Like they don't have juggernauts, and I know Yossi's having a phenomenal season for a defenseman. But in general, they don't have sexy firepower on that roster. But they do have a good power play, and they have great goaltending. 2 things that you absolutely need in a playoff series. And if I was a Preds fan, I'd be riding that fact.
Yep, and they've got guys that can score. So yeah, they're going to be. Either of those teams are going to be tough. My key thing is this: the Wild needs to play the Wild's game. Don't get out of body. Don't do. I'll be very disappointed if the Wild gets suckered into again, and I'm a little bit surprised that they did last night because it clearly didn't work. If they get suckered into playing or trying to play or trying to show their opponent we're tough, just let it come, let it progress. Like if you need to be tough, that's awesome. Be tough, but you don't need to initiate that. You are the thing that you've got, especially. I mean, you've got Krill, bleeping Kaprizov. The thing that you've got is you have, in my opinion, so if you play the Blues or Preds, especially, you have the best player on the ice. You have the best. Find ways to create room. That's awesome. And I will go back to what I've been preaching now for a month. The other thing is, to your point about the playoffs and potentially being different than what we've seen in regular season games against the Blues, who I believe have only played the Wild once in the Winter Classic and drubbed them, and that was an outdoor game. I don't even count that really because it's a weird game. Or the Predators is Dean Evason's going to have a plan. Like there's going to be a coherent plan. You're not going to go in and say, well, this is just our game. I think it starts with that, but you're also you need to have a plan for, okay, if they shut down the Kaprizov line, the Fiala line can score. Like you need there's going to be back and forth scheming, which is awesome to watch and fun. But those are all things that go into a playoff series. I just want to make it very clear that there is a big difference to me between the Wild lost in 6 or 7. I'm really disappointed. I'm mad about it, which is fine. That's understandable. And that was a bust. There's nobody you're going to lose to that's going to be a bust because they're all good too.
Last thing before we get to Dumba's injury here, analytically last night, of course, before the Wild outpossessed the team, goals for, it looked like the Wild should have scored more goals from where they were putting shots on, but they didn't. And this is the prime example of don't look one-sided on a result in analytics in a box score. This is exactly why, right? Like if you didn't see the analytics, like if you never even looked at them, and you just want, all right, I'm going to watch this game with my eyes, and I'm not going to even look at analytics for this game, and I'm going to say who won that game. You would have the decisive fact that Nashville kicked your ass. You didn't stay out of the box, right? Their goaltending was phenomenal. It was great. You lost that game. You shot yourself in the foot.
Right.
This is where you have to blend your analytics with your eye test. Yes, analytically, 49 shots on goal, where those shots were coming from, high danger situations. The Wild should have probably scored more goals. But guess what? Saros is a damn good goaltender and can stop those pucks. So you have to, don't panic, but also blend both these things together. That's the best usage of your analytics and eye test is blending them together. Don't be one-sided with it.
You're 1,000% correct. And it gets back to, with your eyes, I can say this. The advanced metrics might be kind to how you played, but you didn't play your game. You have to play your game. You have to do that. You have to. They got caught up. That's the thing is, and this is not to blame it, but the one thing that analytics can't take into account is the human portion of the game. And when you go in saying we're going to make a statement, and the team's like, okay, cool, bring it on, and you're like, oh, that didn't really work. So yes, I agree. This is a perfect example of where you can find that you can blend things. And look, too, the goaltending since the deadline trade for Fleury has been absolutely phenomenal. Last night, Fleury was not. Now, do I blame him for the loss? No, absolutely not. I don't. Do I say he didn't play great? Yes, I do. So, and this gets back to, in the playoffs, you are going to need your goaltender. If, let's just say, like last year, it's a 7-game series, you're going to need your goaltender to probably steal you minimum 2 games.
Mm-hmm.
And if Saros plays like he did last night, and Fleury plays like he did last night, advantage Saros. So let's talk about Dumba being hurt. But before we do that, let's talk about something positive, because this is going to be a little bit of a downer. Let's talk about our experiences with Chillboys underwear, both the long johns, which are fantastic, and the boxers, chillboys.com. Chillboys is a local company, but just as importantly, or more so, they're a local company that's perfected the art of making underwear for guys. And I'm going to tell you right now, I gave up in life on this topic a long time ago and thought, Declan, underwear is underwear. Like, you know what? I'm a boxers guy. I have been for a long time, but I'm just a boxers guy. Like, I'll just go buy boxers. They're fine. They're boxers.
Same.
Chillboys redefined my definition of acceptance. And right now, much like the Wild should have done last night, when it comes to my underwear, I'm always playing my game. And my game is Chillboys. So I'm not sure about you. I think that your experience echoes mine. But I think we have both found that our game is played in a much better way with Chillboys.
Yeah, no, it's a 200-foot game with Chillboys. That's exactly what it is. It's a 200-foot game.
200-foot
North,
game in the long
south,
underwear.
Yep, defensive end, offensive end.
I bet Friday at the opener, Declan Goff wearing Chillboys.
My long johns most likely too. It's gonna be a little chilly. So yes, I will have my Chillboys on. Some Minnesota-based company, Tom Scornor sent you. It's a great company.
All right. So if Matthew Dumba's out for an extended period of time, which it appears from the tone that Dean Evison took in describing his upper body injury last night, that he is, and I've got a prop here. How do you feel? How do you feel about the fact that it is Calen Addison time, Declan Goff? Calen Addison, the bobblehead. Look at the mustache. Look at that mustache.
All right, but here's the thing.
Yeah.
I want it to be Addison. I don't know if it's going to be. So
I think it has to be, doesn't
well, it has to be. It has
For
to be.
that
But here's
style of game.
But Judd, they've never given him the keys to do it yet.
Well,
So-
actually, in fairness, they did. I believe he played in like 3 or 4 of the playoff games last year. So they have given him some big, important minutes. But yes, you're right. Full time they have not.
I want him to replace Matt Dumba. That's what I want. I want him in the lineup. I want him in there over Merrill. I want him in there over Goligoski. You know, they've been rotating between Kulikov, Merrill, Goligoski as the extra defenseman that's been scratched. And now I just have this horrible feeling that they're going to default to the veteran player. And I think what Bill Guerin knows Addison well. He was there when he was drafted in Pittsburgh. He got him back in a trade with Jason Zucker now 2 years ago. I don't know if Guerin is in love with Addison's game as time has progressed. Now, I will say, if he indeed is plugged and played in Matt Dumba's spot, and Addison plays very, very well, this creates a new great thing for the Wild because it's probably going to provide some evidence, right, that they could move on from Matt Dumba this offseason. That's kind of the fun little part that they could potentially do here. Because if Addison comes in and plays well and plays the game that Matt Dumba does, he plays it at a cheaper level, they could potentially move on from Dumba.
Yeah, there's so many talkers off of this. One is the Dumba thing, the health thing. Really, it's not. It's worn me down. It's worn. And look, it's not his fault often, but my God. So I'll meet you halfway on the talker of the replacement, because as we record this, it certainly does appear that Dumba is going to be out for an extended period, which, if that is true, means into the playoffs probably. I'll meet you halfway. I don't see any way on God's green earth that Calen Addison is going to be put by Brodin in a top 4 role. I think it's going to be somebody else. I think they're going to take a veteran and promote him.
Yeah.
Now, where I will meet you halfway is, depending upon the matchup, I think that he can sneak into the top 6. Where I think there will be conversation, especially playoff wise, is this. And I am not passing judgment here. I'm not saying that I think what I'm about to say is a great idea. I'm saying I think it's the discussion, okay? I think the discussion is, if you play Nashville or St. Louis, which are big, heavy teams, they might be inclined to go with the veterans because of the style of game and the fact that the defenseman's most important attribute is playing defense. Like the offensive component's great, but if you're playing the Predators or Blues, those teams in your defensive zone, you're going to want to be a heavier team that can hit as well to a certain point. All of that being said, personally, I'm with you. All of that being said, personally, I think if the Wild wants to play, and this is what I've been encouraging, the Wild's game, unless there's something about Calen Addison we don't get, like unless there's some big red flag that we don't see, I do like a guy in the top 6 who I think can move the puck, play on the power play, generate offense. I would be very curious to know, back to what you were talking about, what they've seen that they don't like, because clearly there's something.
There's something there. It's not as simple of he's being logged down because there isn't room for him in the top 4. There's something to his game that I think either Guerin, not that it doesn't like yet, but it hasn't progressed to the point that he thought it would. And this goes to the fact of the overarching theme of being in love with prospects, right? And you can't trade this prospect. Well, sometimes prospects don't hit their ceiling. To be honest, the majority of them do not hit their ceiling. Whether you're a 1st-round pick or a 7th-round pick, the majority of prospects do not hit their ceilings. It's more likely that those guys are going to either bust out or not hit their 100th percentile. That's a fact. And we fall in love with the idea of players eventually hitting that glass ceiling. And Addison might be a nice defender. He might be able to move the puck a little bit. But he might not be the guy that we all thought he was, being a top 4 defenseman, right? Like that's the thing that we have to kind of figure out sometimes with not just the Wild, but in all of Twins prospects, and when we're projecting 1st-round picks in the NBA and even football prospects as well. Most of the time, these guys aren't going to hit their percentile. Doesn't mean he can't be a productive player. And I would love to have him get the opportunity to play a significant amount of minutes. But there's something about Addison so far that they haven't fell in love with. And last thing I'll say on it is, I will say, Dumba was a little like this, right? When Dumba first came up, 8th overall pick, was going to be this hot shot defenseman, and it took him a while to really find his game. It took him a long time, to be honest, to find his game. And then you saw it, and you're like, oh, okay, this is the player he could be. But then he tore his pec, and then he still frustrates you, right? Like that's the experience. It's the riding of that wave. So I hope Addison gets called up and he replaces the minutes, but I'm skeptical that he actually does. I have to be proven right on that.
So I believe John Merrill, who got hurt here and didn't go on the road trip, I think he has joined them on this trip, and I think he joined them before last night's game. So if he is set to return, then he will be the first guy probably up against the Blues on Friday night to replace Dumba. Yeah, and the Addison conversation might come down to being as simple as this. Defensively, and this was true about Dumba for a long time, you just simply didn't trust him enough. That's a problem. That's not good. But Addison does provide you with a puck moving ability that the majority of your defensemen, outside of probably Spurgeon, Brodin, and I actually really like Kulikov. I think Kulikov, I was shocked he got scratched. Like Goligoski, I totally got.
He's fine.
Merrill, I totally get. Kulikov to me is a step above those two guys, and I think he's more consistent. But yeah, I think Addison gets recalled at this point, and I think against some opponents he plays. In a big series, though, I don't know if they would play him. I don't know. And yeah, the prospect thing, and Bill Guerin has sort of shown this too. And he's done so much right that at this point in time, I just trust it until it's proven wrong. He definitely, and with Calen, it seems to have gone a bit too far, but he definitely is in the camp of wanting to marinate guys, right? Like allow them to marinate in the minors. You've got Rossi, who, by the way, I think it's probably the right call, but he's still there. He, well, heck, Boldy did. I mean, Boldy, I still think could have probably been up for the playoffs last year. And I do think that there's a lot of teams that probably would have given him that opportunity. Now, did staying down at Iowa help him? Yeah, probably. But this is definitely a team that is very much anti putting young players in a position to fail, which I completely get. But in this case, if you give me John Merrill basically for Dumba, I mean, God bless him, but he's a bottom pair guy.
Yeah.
So does Kulikov move up? And do you put him with Brodin and Goligoski and Merrill together? I guess it's interesting.
It is.
It's interesting in this, and again with Dumba, the timing could not be worse. Could not absolutely be worse, because that's a loss. All right, final thoughts on this topic before we say goodbye and turn it over to Phil Mackey being in tow with us on Write That Down.
Well, this is what I'm starting to get scared of a little bit, is that injuries starting to pile up at the worst possible times. This is a fear, right? This is what I was talking about with Foligno with you last week, that not that you just sit him because it's not worth not playing him, but you're going to lose a guy to an injury here. And this is a fear that now it might be coming to fruition with Dumba potentially out. So, as they get closer and as things start to distance themselves a little bit more, you got to start resting guys when you get close to the playoffs. Because I would be so upset if they lost another core player like this for an extended period of time.
I think until they're locked in, dude, I don't think they're going to. And there's a case to be made, but I do not think this team will rest a soul of importance unless they are absolutely positively locked in.
Mm-hmm.
Because the points are still close. They played the Blues on Friday, and as of this morning, recording this on Wednesday, I believe the Blues are 3 points back.
Yeah.
And so then you fall into third, which costs you home ice. I want to say the Predators, after the win last night, are 7 back, so they're a bit more back. But the point being is, with this GM and coach, I don't see any way that they rest guys unless they are 100% by the end locked into a spot. And I think they're going to fight their ass off to get home ice in the first round. which is probably smart. My final thought is this, and it improved, but to your point from before about trying to define a game from a box score and actually watching said game, find a way to win a damn face-off, a key face-off. The face-offs started off last night incredibly one-sided towards the Predators and evened up a bit after that. But I think that there were at least 2 of those power play goals, Declan, scored directly off of face-off losses. I don't care if you fall on the bleeping guy's stick. You got to find a way to tie the puck up. That's my final thought. All right. Should we get to write that down?
Let's do it.
All right.